Welcome to We in Lewes, a podcast dedicated to celebrating the remarkable, creative, and energetic people who live in Lewes, Delaware, and are helping forge a community soul as appealing as it is unique. I'm Kevin McGinnis. Our guest today is Heidi Lowe, a nationally known contemporary artist, jeweler, gallery owner, business coach, teacher, and so much more, and one of the most energetic and positive people you'll ever have the good fortune to meet. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at the Leanne Wilkinson Group of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Penn Fed Realty. Try putting that on a business card. Leanne and her team have ranked number one in real estate sales in coastal Delaware for over 20 years, and amazingly ranked number two nationally for the Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate Network. No one knows the greater Lewes market better than Leanne. She and her team make it easy, whether you're buying, selling, or just searching for the perfect home to spoil grandchildren. We're very excited and grateful for their support of the podcast. Heidi, welcome. What is it that makes jewelry so much more powerful than anything else we can wear?
Well, thank you for having me. It's been fun to get ready, and I'm excited to be here. I mean, jewelry is connected to the body. It's that scale, it's that memento, it's that history. I mean, all of the pieces that we have made through history are being recycled. So they're ending up on the body. They may have been at, King Arthur's table, or they may be somewhere, but they have a life of their own. When people come in and they've had a loved one pass away, a lot of times I'll send them to the medium with their jewelry before we actually take it apart, because there's usually a lot in that jewelry that they've worn every day. So jewelry carries a lot of meaning, and it also carries a lot of energy. And I just love all of that. So I just work off of that all the time.
Is that in part because it's a piece of art in your hands, but you wear it, it touches you. So you have a different relationship with the customer than a painter.
Yeah.
Because you don't carry the painting around on you. You don't.
No, I mean, I think that, painting is great because when you're in your house, you see it and you have a special conversation with the painting. But jewelry is something like you choose every day. You either wear the piece all the time, or you're actually making a distinctive decision based on what is going on, whether what you're doing, what you've got on. And I also think it just carries a lot of meaning. And that's what I really want my work to do. I'm not that interested in making pieces that are about, a 2-carat diamond just because it's a 2-carat diamond. I would much rather have it have a little bit more meaning behind it and really symbolize somebody's moment in their life.
You said earlier, you mentioned that you like the piece to go to a medium. I don't think we're talking about art medium here.
No. So a lot of people come in with very big stories. My mother passed away and this is her jewelry. And, or my husband passed away and this is his wedding ring. Or, all of these very emotional things. And sometimes I'm like, oh, this person is ready. Let's do this thing. We're ready for this next step. And it's part of the cathartic process. And I love holding space for that. But sometimes the person's not ready. And I can tell they're not ready. And that's okay. They feel like they should be ready, but they're not. So I send them. Donna McEntee is a wonderful medium in Bethany area. So I send them down to Donna and I tell them to bring their jewelry, and just maybe there's something there for them that is waiting that might help them move to the next space. And, some people look at me like I'm crazy, and some people are like, oh, and a lot of people actually go, and, there might be something in there that they needed to hear in order to really put themselves at ease. And I find that to be just like magical. It's just a magical experience. Mm-hmm.
Your jewelry has been described as contemporary art, both individual pieces and pieces specifically created after consulting with a customer.
Yeah, I really come from a art perspective. Like, I want the pieces to have intention, have conceptual ideas, be formally thought about. The back is as important as the front. The mechanism works really well on the body. So my work is really coming from an art background, and whether I'm working with a customer or I'm making a piece from a collection, I'm still working with those ideas. the pieces that are from my collection may appear as more artistically driven because I don't have any constraints. So I get to be as free as I want, and if people buy them, that's great. But it's more about my own intention of the pieces. When I'm working with a customer, it's about our collaboration.
But does this allow you, in addition to making the normal sort of things you would in any jewelry, or you would see in a jewelry store, this allows you to use jewelry to make a statement?
Absolutely, which is way more fun. So we do things like we had the Plan B exhibition, which was all about rights for abortion rights and women's rights and reproductive rights. So it's like we get to make a statement, and the jewelers that I work with are all working within this realm of, they are contemporary artists. In my mind, they're almost like the most contemporary artists because they are working in this format that people don't expect.
But you also do pieces just for specific people. People will come in and talk with you about the design of a ring or a necklace.
Yes, those pieces, I didn't expect to really like those pieces. I thought they'd want me to make the same thing over and over and over, and I'd have to be like, oh, so boring. But it actually is one of my favorite things to do. So I have the customer write a poem. They don't know they're doing this, but I ask for 3 words about their intention for the piece. So whether that be, something about their mom or something about a death or a marriage or whatever, then I have them write 3 words about their style: organic, bold, straight lines, delicate. And then I have them write 3 words about what they know they want in the piece. Like, do they want it to be a ring? Do they want to include these diamonds? Is it going to be yellow gold? And from those 3 little questions, usually the first drawing is what we go with.
Wow.
And so that really creates a connection and a way of understanding the person quickly.
From a practical standpoint, how long does it take to make a ring, just as you described, or a necklace or something of this sort?
So the first part is just meeting with the client, and usually we do that pretty intuitively and pretty fast, and that's an hour or 2 hours, not even sometimes. And then it's finding sourcing, if they want a tourmaline or if they want a diamond or if they want something, then going to get those things. And once we have that, then it's a matter of about a month. I usually say a month. It could be 5 weeks. It could be 6 weeks, depending if we have something come up. But normally it's about a month from start to finish. And that depends on what it is. I mean, some things need different processes.
What was the inspiration for building a collection around liana vines?
So during the pandemic, we were all in new spaces and doing new things. And I was enjoying the focus of that time and knew, like, you've got a little time here that you don't normally have. So, do something with it. And I kept watching this vine that was just so strong and so beautiful and so determined. And I thought, we could all use a little bit of that right now. And so I started just tapering these wires and drawing and imitating this, vine. And it kind of just resonated with me as far as this a piece that I could really feel at that moment. And so I love this collection because it kind of is a bridge between my really artistic, creative work and pieces that people can wear every day. And it really does something that I've been looking to do for a long time, but didn't know how or didn't take the time to do.
When you imagine a piece, do you see the entire piece, or do you get started and then it may take you in a different direction?
I usually see the whole thing, which sometimes I try and leave space for a little bit more ingenuity during. I think I should have that, and should being a word you don't really need to use, but I try and really leave open spaces. But most of the time, I know exactly what it's going to be. And from having minimal amount of time to do things, I have to be efficient. So a lot of times I'm thinking of things in the shower that are going to happen, in my studio, and it may take me a week to get to them, or 3 weeks, but they're pretty resolved by the time I get to the studio. So I would say my biggest creative advantage is that I do things and I finish them. So most artists have there's so much criticality in their head, so many voices speaking to them that are not helpful. You have to make the thing to know if it's a thing that you want to live with. But for me, I like making the thing enough to not care what it looks like in the end, and then I can decide if I want to keep it or it wants to go in scrap bin, but I am engaged in the process. And that was something I learned from my mom. I mean, she was an art teacher at Cape and then at the Rehoboth Art League for 25 years. And it's about the process. You live in the process and then you decide if it's something you want to keep or if you want to do it, but it's that being okay with it being whatever it is when you're finished. My mom always said, you are very determined. And, I think one part of her was ready to like lose it on me. And the other part of it was appreciative of that fact. But that has kept me going. I'm determined. I will try it. And I don't see things as a failure. People are like, oh, failure. I'm like, what's a failure? I mean, you just do it. You assess it. You decide if you're going to do it again. Within reason, that seems like it's not a failure. You just tried something that didn't work. I don't know.
So you have an idea. And as you said, the piece will come fully formed into your mind. Then what?
So I have a concept. And then from that concept, I do drawing. So I just take sketching to the next level and take it to a place where I can see a finished piece. And sketching is just part of my process. So I love to sketch. I love to sketch at the beach. I love to sketch at home. So I do a lot of that. And then from there, usually I know what's happening. And then the little bit of openness is like what the next piece will be. Like, it's like, oh, this piece is talking to me about this, but oh, this next piece has this opening for something new. And so it's that like allowing yourself to finish a piece to know what the next piece is. But I love to sketch, and it was just something we did. I mean, my mom, we would go to Maine, and there were 3 kids. The 3 of us would go up the mountain. We'd walk Mount Batty. We'd all get our cutting boards out with a piece of watercolor paper. We'd get our Sharpies and our watercolors out, and we'd paint what we saw, and then we'd close up shop and walk back down. And it wasn't a question of, what will you do when you grow up? It was like, you will be creative. And my brother's an amazing architect with an office in San Francisco and Maine. And then my sister is an amazing painter who right now is on a boat in Tahiti. But she paints amazing, beautiful pictures. And my mom is in Maine and she is a painter. I mean, she's a painter of all types of 2D art. So, wow. And my dad was a builder, and he was a builder in this area, and he passed away, but he could draw plans in his sleep. So
it's a lot of artistic talent in one family.
Yeah, we had tons of art supplies, and they were good art supplies when we were little, and we were allowed to make a really big mess.
Tell us a little bit about the wedding band workshop.
Oh,
I don't think I used the right name, but
well, Lovely Rings by Hand is the wedding ring.
much more appropriate.
Lovely Rings by Hand is the name of the wedding ring workshop. And the wedding ring workshop is something that happened really organically. People kept asking me, can I help? Can we do something? I'd like to be part of it. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I teach 6-year-olds how to make silver bands. Can I teach adults to make gold bands on their first try? And, I got a little beta testing because people would ask, and I'd say, I don't know if it's going to work, but you want to try it? And they were game. So I brought them into the studio, and they tell me the width and the thickness and the contour of the ring that they're looking for in the end. And from there, we, in usually less than 4 hours, create just the couple and myself 2 wedding bands that are professional grade.
Really?
It's so fun.
And does that allow them to be more than just a plain band?
They are a plain band with very subtle differences. Like someone could hammer the outside. They can be rounded. They can be flat. We are looking for full-on success. So we keep it very simple. And most people, that's what they're looking for. And the people we attract are more into the meaning and adding their energy into the ring than they are about like, oh, I really want this ring to be exactly this thing with 25 diamonds in it. They really want like a band that is a symbol.
In addition to being an art jeweler, you also have your own gallery. You're a teacher, a business coach, support and showcase other artists, and even teach a workshop that allows couples to create their own wedding bands. How do you balance all of that?
Different days, different things. business coaching happens on this day, and teaching happens on this day, and I work in the studio on this day, and I meet clients on this day, and I have a team. I have 5 people who work for me. I have a VA, a virtual assistant. I have 2 people in the front of the house and 2 people downstairs with me, all who are amazing. They're all behind everything that we do. They help with all of the different things. They come from jewelry programs around the country. I just had Cassidy moved from Texas, so she just moved here from an art administration position at Lubbock, Texas, and so I have a team, and if without that team, it would not be what it is.
Not everyone listening to this podcast will be familiar with a virtual assistant. What does that mean?
My virtual assistant is in the Philippines. He helps me. His name is Josh. I love Josh. He helps me with
You've never met Josh?
No, I've never met. Well, I met him online, Zoom. Yeah. But Josh and I do things like he helps me with just planning for my social media. So I give him the images and my ideas, and he makes the schedule for it. And then I go in and fill in certain things, or one of my team members goes in and fills in certain things so that he can be ready to post it. And that makes my life, people think I do all of these things, but I can't do all of these things. And I realized that very early on, and hired an intern the first year and an employee the second year.
Tell us a little bit about your business coach work.
So about 8 years ago, I studied with IPEC, the International Profession of Coaching Excellence, which, I thought I mentor a lot of students through the internships. So I'm mentoring all the time. And I thought, you probably should do this better. Who knows if you're even doing a good job? And I would have all these ideas, and I'd tell all my interns these ideas, but they're not their ideas. So I thought you should do a better job at this. And so I did this program. It was a year-long program, and it was very intensive. It was 8 to 10 hours a week, in person, online, reading, writing. I thought, oh my gosh, I thought they were just going to give me this thing. And no, they didn't. So I worked for a year doing this, 3 in-person weekends, and left just, my business was stronger, I was stronger, and helping people grow their businesses, especially artists who already think they have to be starving in order to be productive. I was like, we have to break this myth. And artists have all of the skills to make a business because they know how to organize themselves in a way that's outside the box. They know how to problem solve, and they can do it. They just have been told they can't.
Are you mostly a coach in the jewelry industry?
Mostly. I have clients in Canada and the United States and different places around the world for art jewelry and jewelry. But also I've had massage therapists, landscapers. It's pretty universal. And a lot of times it becomes life and business coaching. It's really about what's holding you up in your world.
In addition to all of this, you also are the volunteer chair of the City of Lewes Public Arts Commission, which is charged with bringing a range of quality art in public spaces in and around the city of Lewes. Is it hard to find a piece of public art that pleases everyone around town?
Well, we don't try and please everyone. We can't do that. We're trying to create conversation. Our goal is to have 2 people end up at a piece and maybe stumble upon it or go see it and have a conversation about something they weren't anticipating that day. And I love that the public arts brings this work that, expands people and asks them to think differently. And they might hate, but they have a response.
And is that sort of the goal?
That's the goal.
To create a response, not just to have someone say, oh, I love that, I want that in my house.
Yes, absolutely. And we're doing something that the state, no one else in the state of Delaware is doing. The DDOA, when I met with them, they were like, you are doing something different by bringing this work here and having this be an ongoing annual collection that temporary, so it changes every year, which allows people to see a lot of contemporary art.
What's your favorite piece that you've been involved bringing here?
Well, I'm really excited for next week's piece because next week we have DeWitt Godfrey coming, and he's bringing this cellular steel piece. I like all of them, but this is really exciting. And it's just so cool to meet the artists and to see what they're doing. And he's been, he teaches at Colgate. He is an amazing sculptor, but it's the last 10 years of his life. I think he's in his 60s, and it's the last 10 years of his life that have been really monumental in his work. He just put a piece in the Portland, Oregon airport that was the biggest piece he's ever made. And I mean, for us to get a piece like that, a small piece, is just, I mean, I was so excited. So I would love to have these pieces travel to 3 eastern cities. That's the goal of mine, so that these artists get 3 spots somewhere. But that's a long-term goal.
And where will this piece be?
This piece will be in front of the Overfalls, looking out onto the canal, right in that middle section. We've had pieces before.
Looking forward to seeing it. In an earlier episode of this podcast, Matt DiSabantino shared how you played a critical role in creating the restaurant Half Full. What's amazing about his story is that you didn't just call him to tell him some retail space was coming up. You also told him what business should go there, and he wisely took your advice.
I would say that I didn't tell him. I just made a suggestion. And it was self-serving, of course, because who doesn't want pizza and wine? But it just was, when I saw that space becoming open, and I know Matt and how he rolls. I mean, he can do anything. So I was like, he's the perfect person for it. I should just drop this over here. And it's one of those things where you can have an idea, but you don't need to execute all your ideas. And Matt is really good at executing ideas.
You found staff.
Yes.
In case anyone misses all the connections we're talking about, in addition to telling Matt what he should do with his next business, you waited tables at Striper Bites. Is that right?
Well, that's when I had the idea.
Oh.
So I was waiting tables at Striper Bites. I knew this piece of property had an opening, and I went into work that night, and I was like, Matt, I have an idea.
Wow. With everything that you're doing and everything going on and the whole creative urge, how do you mentally organize yourself?
Well, like I said before, it's daily. It's like these days are for certain.
So you have specific days. The only thing you're going to do on Wednesday is,
I try to do different things on different days, because I find the switch over between things is where I have problems. And I try and create space between things, which is a little bit hard sometimes. But I find that time is good for integration. Like, okay, just take a note of what you're doing and what you just did, or so you can integrate it and then take action steps. But I've had to learn how to organize myself and how to bring in people to do different things, and then hold myself accountable many times. And I've had to learn to do things on the fly.
When did you sell your first piece of jewelry?
I think I sold my first piece of jewelry. I made my first piece at Cape and Lopin High School, and then I was in a show at the Rehoboth Art League. I think it was their members' art show, and I sold this piece. I got an award, and I sold it. It was very exciting. I mean, positive feedback does a lot.
It does. Positive feedback is great.
It really, I got positive feedback very early on for making jewelry, so it was a thing I was going to do. So I had my first jewelry business when I was 13. My mom had a children's clothing shop on Rehoboth Avenue, and I would, have lots of time. So there were bead stores in town. I'd go get beads. I'd come back. I'd make earrings. And then at one point I stole her screens from her house, which, I made them beautiful and put ribbon around the edge and put a bow at the top and put my name at the bottom, which was Cosmic Creations, and put my little bio down there. And I'd hung earrings all over the screen, and I would bring it down to shops, and they'd buy the whole screen. And so, I'd make $100, and I thought, life is good. And then they would reorder, and I was like, this is the best thing since sliced bread. I was like, I'm definitely doing this for the rest of my life. I don't know what you people are doing. And so it was a great way to get to know the community. And it was it was all positive reinforcement, and it was great. So, and I didn't know anything about, business as far as like buying your supplies, but I figured that out later.
Yeah, it's always the shock when you have a great idea and then you start learning about getting a license.
Yes, I didn't have any of that. So
When you were growing up, you were down closer to Rehoboth, is that right?
I was actually in between. So I was on Plantations Road before it was Plantations Road.
Is that what it was called?
It was Warrington Road at that point.
And could you travel easily down to Rehoboth from there?
I could travel to Rehoboth Elementary on my bike with my brother and my good friend Susanna, and we would go on dirt bikes through the parking lots and the road all the way to Rehoboth Elementary. And we could do this and nothing was stopping us because the traffic in the winter was so minimal. And I have that memory. I'm so glad that I have.
That's great. Then you started, it seems, to get a little more serious in addition to all the sales, but at Cape, is that right?
So I made earrings for years, but then when I was in my senior year, Mr. Gardowski, who just passed away, he let me make my first silver metal-smithed ring. And this, I begged him for years. And so one day he stuck me.
He wouldn't let you?
Well, it's like a lot of tools and you could ruin them and there's fire involved. So he was like, these kids, no, just don't be annoying. Paint, would you? And so he finally, after I was begging him, he sent me in the back with this huge piece of metal and said, hammer this. And I was like, okay, well, I'll do that. And so I hammered, I think, for 4 class periods. And he was like, I'm going to wear her out. I was like, you're not going to wear me out.
Was this something you were evening out?
I was just making a round wire into a flat wire to make it into a band. But, didn't know what I was doing. And he told me to hammer it. So I just hammered it. And it was longer than I needed. And so I was in the back and just hammering away. And he walked me through the steps of making a ring. And I was sold. I was like, this is the best thing ever. And I get to work with fire. And it's like magic. And I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, send me to school. I was going to Maine College of Art already. And this just solidified the deal as far as I was like, I don't need to go take any core classes anywhere else. I'll be in the metal studio if you need me.
Now, what led leaving Cape and going to Maine?
We vacationed in Maine. My mom is from Boston, and we would go up every year. So we would go to the MFA in Boston and go to the museums. We would go up to Maine and Portland and then up to Camden. And Maine is just, it's like one of those places that gets in your heart. So I was like, well, this is a choice. Then I'm going. And I would look out over the harbor in Portland. So our studios were in the Congress, on Congress Street in this beautiful old department store. And it looked over the harbor.
And then from there, you went to SUNY at New Paltz?
SUNY New Paltz, yes. I went there. I took 1 year off and worked as a jeweler in a small jewelry store and then realized that I didn't want to just do bench jewelers like all the time, same thing every day. So I went to New Paltz, and that is a great school with a in-state tuition if you live there for a year beforehand. And it's just a great school that has really built a jewelry program out of being close to the city. So they really feed off the contemporary art happening in the city. And so you get this great, really expansive education.
I believe it's the #1 ranked public university with a metal program. Is that right?
It has been.
Yeah. So as I like to say, getting an MFA from New Paltz is kind of like getting an MBA from Harvard.
Well, that
or maybe
is really
it should be
nice.
The other way around.
That's really nice to say. I've never thought of it that way, but thank you.
Well, I think New Paltz would be happy to
Yes.
include that in their advertising.
New Paltz was a great place to set a standard, and that standard has helped me and my business just create just like what I will do and what I won't do and really drive from an art place. So that was their whole thing. Like, we're just driving from a conceptual idea.
And from there, did you go to New York?
Then I moved because, you're like that close and you get to know the city and then you're like, I want to be there. So I moved to New York City. I worked at Leo Koenig Gallery to learn about the gallery. I knew coming out of school I wanted to have a gallery because there were so few art galleries in the country that were focused on art jewelry. And so I wanted to do that. I wanted to be able to show art jewelry to the public. And no, I did not think I would do it in Lewes, Delaware, but I have to say that they've been amazingly welcoming.
You spent some time in New York, but what led to the transition from New York City, which is sort of the polar opposite in many ways from Lewes?
Well, I was living in New York City for 3 years, pretty much working around the clock between waitressing and making my own work and selling it and then working in a gallery. And I just realized that I didn't have the capital to do it there. And so I came back and we had a space on Rehoboth Avenue my family owned. And so I said, can I rent this space from you? And they said my mom had bought it with that in mind. So they were welcoming for me to rent it from them. And then I opened the space. I was working at Striper Bites, paying for the little things that needed to be done. And without much of anything and with no real education on how to do it, I did it.
Now, was Paul here then? Was your husband Paul here at that time?
Yeah, so he had been living here, and we had been doing long distance for 3 years, and he helped me, do things that needed to be done, like his company and him and his dad helped me renovate that space, so it went from squalor to actually usable and functioning, and had electric for the first time in 10 years.
Seriously?
Seriously. It didn't smell like beer anymore from people sleeping in it.
And you had first dated, I think, back at Cape. Is that right?
Yeah, Paul and I dated in high school, and we went to the senior prom together.
Oh, wow.
And then, I was like, we cannot do this. We have to go our separate ways. We both needed to go. He went to Montana and then Appalachian State and then California. And I went, New York and Oregon and Maine. And then we came back and, it was like, well, you're cuter than I thought you were.
Why did you decide to move your gallery to Front Street in Lewes, kind of kitty corner to the post office?
I was not intending to move my business to Lewes. I was riding a wave that happened prior to the pandemic. I was planning on rebuilding my spot in Rehoboth, and I was heading down to get permitting, and something just felt off about it. So I paused, and then a pandemic happened, and I was really happy that I had paused. And then I was behind Surf Bagel in a dead-end street, which I was very happy in for 3 years. And something about that energy shifted, and I just had a realization that that space had completed itself. And I was moving, just thinking about the next steps. And I had a feeling that this space was available, so I immediately called Randy and Ricky, and they said you could have it. I, of course, didn't put my chickens in one basket, but I then moved on and just thought, okay, we'll see if this happens. And that was when Maureen from Aquamarine was in there. And so I gave it some time, and then it came to fruition.
And it has both the sort of first floor space, which looks like a traditional store,
yeah,
and then you have space downstairs. Is that right?
Yes, it's kind of the culmination of all my spaces. So my space in Rehoboth was very tiny, and we could only do one thing at a time. And that was what kind of led me to need more space. Is like I could teach a class or sell a piece of jewelry. I could make something or teach a class. Nothing could happen at the same time. And then in my space on Ward Avenue, I had a lot of studio space, which was really great for me, but no gallery space. And this space at 119 Front Street is just a combo of both. So I have this beautiful gallery space, and then we have a really great studio space where we can be a little bit removed, but they can still see us.
You also showcase other artists at your gallery. Are these people you have met throughout your career, or you've gotten to know from school or from the art shows that you've done?
It is a very organic web. So, some people email me and ask to be in the gallery, and, that is one way. There's other people who it's a little web, and then I've met somebody else and somebody else and somebody else. And so it just keeps expanding out. And it goes both ways. Like I show work in other galleries, they show work here, but it's a very tight group, and a lot that we support one another. So the art jewelry field is very small, and if they have something going on and they need my support, I try and show up for them. And if they want to do a show and they're really excited about it and they come to me and say, oh, I've got that work, but I really want to show this, then I try and really foster that too.
What is it about this area that allows and supports such an original gallery or an original business as yours?
I don't know. As far as I feel like people come from all over, I have really catered to two different publics. So I cater to the public that is here and knows Heidi and wants to buy Heidi's work, which is so endearing and kind and generous. And then I also cater to a public that is in a broader space. And some of them are coming here for the summer and are like, oh, wow, this is here. And other ones are getting it online or getting it when we go to New York City Jewelry Week. But that's a more expansive art jewelry collector, and both people can be happy in the gallery.
But do you think you could have had in New York City, for example, such a diverse, I don't know it's beyond a business. I mean, it's a personal conglomerate.
Well, I don't know. I mean, my thing about here is like I had such a base to stand on. So all of the people who saw that the gallery was Heidi Lowe and they knew me when I was 5 showed up. In New York City, I wouldn't have had that. So I love having a gallery for a week during New York City Jewelry Week, and I get the best of both worlds. So I can go up there, have a gallery for a week, and then come back here. And I like the quality of life here. So I feel so lucky to be able to do 100% of what I want to do, the way I want to do it, right here in the town where I want to live. I mean, what more could I ask for?
And what is it about the town that makes you want to live here?
I just feel lucky to live here. I love the history. I love that my grandfather was a fireman here. I love that I remember going to Lewes Beach and being on the Reardon's raft. I love that it's grown and that we have choice here. I love that we get city people who then they bring something new. I love that the town is expansive enough to care about contemporary art, but yet really allows me to be exactly who I want to be. And that's a pretty amazing thing.
What's the next theme or gallery collection that's coming?
So I'm planning to have a show in September. I think I'm going to name it Love Letters to Lewes. It's going to be really about just all those things that I was talking about. So it will be some from the visuals of Lewes, some from the patterns of Lewes, some from the feeling of Lewes. And I've started it. I haven't finished it, but I'm going to take the month of August and really focus on that. So that will be happening in September.
But do you find that, given that you're a very creative person, that periodically if you're around other creative people, you seem to have new ideas? You seem to have suddenly, and you're looking at something differently than you've ever been before. And it provides not that you need any more energy, but it does provide an energy to your work.
I find that especially with like live music, like I make time for live music because I feel like that's a spark because I just gives me a little space. But I find for myself, I am very open and outward. So what I need for my creativity is to be silent and quiet. And so that is what I have to find time for. And I do transcendental meditation every day. And I try, and really that's those spaces in between things that I try and get, because as much as I feed off of everybody's energy and I'm so happy, all of the women and men and all the amazing people I have in my life, I have to find those like down times and quiet times for myself.
Because you need the quiet to be creative.
Yeah. I need space between things. Mm-hmm.
Everyone wants to do things. Everybody wants to hang out and do things or go to something. You always need someone in the group that's the organizer.
Mm-hmm.
Are you that person?
I like to connect people. So like I'm an organizer in the way that I'll be like, oh, Kevin's got this podcast and I know this person and I'm going to send them together because I think they're really a good fit. Right now I have an intern and I'm got her in contact with a graduate program that I think it makes sense. It's totally, and she got a free ride going to this amazing program in Milwaukee. And, that's like when I'm like, yes, we're winning. And then with people, it's like, I love putting people together who will make something new and different just from coming together. So yes, I would say that I'm an organizer, and I also like hosting. Like I love to be the host rather than the person who comes to the party.
Thank you, Heidi, for joining us today and providing a glimpse into your fascinating and very complex world. You certainly are doing a lot more things than I think anyone imagined simply looking at your storefront. Again, you can find Heidi's studio on Front Street and also see her amazing creations on her website, HeidiLoweGallery.com.
Thank you so much for having me.
A special thanks to today's sponsor, the Leanne Wilkinson Group. There's a reason they're number one, and that's the excellent service they provide every client, as my wife Kath and I can personally attest. You can find out more at www.leannegroup.com. And finally, thank you for joining us and your kind words of support these past few weeks. Our next episode will air later this month. For more information and updates, please follow our Instagram account, We and Lewes, the podcast. Have a wonderful day, and please, the next time you're in town, stop and take a moment to enjoy the remarkable hamlet called Lewes, which some of us are lucky enough to call home. Till next time, this has been We and Lewes, the podcast.